There's a lady I know in Boulder. She doesn't live in Boulder anymore. She moved out. Sorry, my hair's messed up. Um, no, I'm really not. My hair's fine how it is. Matter of fact, let's mess it up a little bit further. I know how people like to pretend like I'm a nut job when my hair's messed up, so let's give you the nut job treatment. This lady used to give out food, not just with food, not bombs. She used to come down on her own and bring us food. She's been having problems because two of her predators, well, they thought they got away with it. They thought that because they did these things to her in her youth, that now that she's an adult, they get away with it scot free. Well, she ain't having none of that. Now, there's some things that she does that I couldn't possibly. I would never get away with them. Um, but also, much like me, she realized that the law was no measure of morality and that her predators were going to get away. She needed to get law enforcement to do something about it, but rather than do something about it, they wanted to threaten, harass, intimidate her, and blow her off. Why is this? She's a female. We're supposed to cater to females in the United States, aren't we? That's what we're all about, isn't it? Well, that is, unless they're homeless. Kind of like we are supposed to cater to black folks in the United States now, unless, of course, they're homeless. See, the things that killed George Floyd, those things are done to the homeless every day, and nobody gives two shits. And this lady is going through hell, going through a lot of gaslighting. I know all about that. Now, she's sent some pictures to people that I would not have. Uh, Not so much the people necessarily, it's the pictures themselves. I'm not going to send people pictures of my anything. She wrote, I sent the cop a video of my asshole and twat and said, in appreciation for your involvement in my gaslighting. Then I sent a copy oh, of that sent email to every news station and newspaper and every sheriff's office in a 300 radius of Portland. Well, she's female. She can get away with that a little bit more than I can, but she's still homeless, so not by much. Now, there's some other things that she's done that obviously I would not get away with, but that my predators did. And that's not saying that this woman is a predator. That's saying this woman is fed up. She should have her opportunity to speak. She should have the chance to tell her story. Now, I was supposed to get on with her earlier today, but I ended up sleeping until about 2 o'clock this morning. So I've only been up for about 2 hours. When you deal with the homeless, you deal with a revolving society. Homeless people are constantly moving because you are constantly being told, you can't be here, you can't be here, we don't want you here, we don't want your kind here, you people are this, you people are that, you need to move on, you're going to jail. Pretty much anything so that the general public doesn't have to see poverty. Now, this lady, after all she had done for the people of Boulder, especially the homeless of Boulder County, she was not treated much better than I was. Now, albeit she was not accused of killing anybody, But that doesn't detract from the fact that she still has to deal with her predators, just like Natalie Bollinger still had to deal with Ted Bollinger, just like Alicia Bollinger still has to deal with him. One of the reasons for putting this lady's story on my channel, and of course I'm going to let her tell it herself, is that we need to do something. We got to work together. You know, a lot of victims, since Natalie was killed, there's been a lot of victims of other crimes. And I've been helping people as best I can how they need it, how they ask, which is something that I did not get from my supposed friends. They were incapable of coming forward and telling the truth. They were too afraid. Well, thank goodness for this lady here. She is not too afraid. There gets a point where, sure, you're afraid to tell on your predators, but at the same time, those predators are not stopping. And if they're not going to stop, you have to do something. So you replace that fear with anger. This woman's anger is a lot more deep-seated than mine because, well, she's allowed to be. Because of her gender, she's allowed to be pissed off at these people where I'm not. She's also allowed to do and say things that would get me put in prison. Matter of fact, people will have literally twisted what I've said into something that I didn't say and had me put in prison. I spent 7 months locked up this year. Most of that time in Lincoln Correctional Center. Now, this lady has been beaten a lot. When I knew her in Boulder, you could tell that she was highly intelligent. You could tell that she knew what the hell was going on. Now it's difficult for people to take her seriously because she was beaten so badly that she has a speech impediment now. She talks slowly. She has problems making her jaw work properly in order to properly sound the words out. She got beaten down by some of the homeless that I know in Boulder. And before you start saying, oh, well, homeless this and homeless that, I want you to pay attention to the fact that most of the abuse that we take is not from other homeless people. It's from the police and the public who hate us for being broke. They hate us because we don't have thousands of dollars to try to get into a place. They hate us because we are easy to victimize. They hate us because they are taught that we're all a bunch of junkies, we're all a bunch of alcoholics, we're all a bunch of child molesters and things of that nature. But we're not. Each and every one of us is an individual, and it's not like we have some Nazi job. Like we all have to work together to try to screw over the American people. We're not law enforcement. Law enforcement doesn't care about right or wrong, especially when one of theirs does wrong. It's somehow magically okay. They can make some excuse to justify it. Now, this woman, she's been assaulted a lot. She's had to deal with things that I have had to deal with on a massive level. The number of times that she claims that she's been assaulted, most of you would go, oh, well, that never happens. That could never happen. But the fact is, it does. You piss off the wrong people. A lot of times, all you got to do to piss somebody off is tell on them. If somebody rapes you and you tell on them, well, they're going to try to fuck your life up after that. This lady has been to multiple states, just like me, trying to avoid the BS. Something needs to be done. Now, I'm hoping that because she's female, you guys might listen a little bit better. You might actually try to make the connection there between homeless people and human beings, because male homeless people are not considered human beings by your society. Hopefully, this lady speaking up will get you guys understanding that, yeah, these things do actually happen. Maybe this lady speaking up, she's got some of the same predators that I do. Not just, but specific officers by name, specific homeless people. We're fighting a tough battle and we're doing it alone. This lady and I, hopefully, we can work together. A lot of the people who have offered to help, they offer to help and then they don't talk to me for 2 or 3 days. They're allowed to be depressed, and I'm supposed to understand. And I do. I understand that when you say you're going to help me tomorrow, and I get a hold of you tomorrow, and you don't even look at the message I sent you, see it for a whole week. I got a lot of stuff I got to get done, and I can't wait on you for a whole week, so I have to find somebody else to help. Right now, I got some stuff I got to be able to get to the Nebraska State Patrol. In order to do that safely, though, I have to have people on my side, in my corner, who are actually paying attention to what's going on, actually taking a look at the evidence and actually speaking out. This lady here, because of her newly developed speech problems, people are not likely to listen to her. They're more likely to listen to me than they are to listen to her. She got brain damage from being beaten on. Now, while I was able to get people to take me in, a lot of people know my reputation from the media, but there's a lot of people that know me in real life. And where this lady was stuck out on the streets taking beatings just like I was at the beginning, I was able to get away from most of those beatings by knowing people who could take me in. This lady doesn't have anyone to take her in. A lot of those people are either friends with her abusers or afraid of her abusers. That's something I've been dealing with for the last 5 years as well. I got to be able to turn in my predators. I'm hoping by helping her turn in hers that we can get something going to protect us from situations like this. When you hear her speaking, you guys might think that she's slow, but she's really not. She's highly intelligent. Some of the crazy things that she has to say aren't actually crazy. They just sound crazy because you haven't gone through it. She's not blaming her abuse on aliens. She doesn't think that it's the CIA with some magic brainwave that they're shooting into her head from Washington, D.C. She doesn't think it's the Illuminati doing this stuff. Like me and my predators, she understands that their motivations are simple. Her father and her stepfather, their motivations were, well, they wanted to have sex with a little girl. Now their motivation is they don't want to get in trouble for forcing themselves on little girls. Their motivation before was that they just wanted to bust a nut. Their motivation now is that they don't want people to know who they busted a nut in. These two men have every reason to be afraid of her. Do you know why? Because much like with murder, there is no statute of limitations on child molestation. That one, this one, typed hi Sean. Hi, that one, this one. Welcome to my channel again. Now, this lady that I'm talking about, I won't be able to do anything this morning. It's already 4:08 a.m. here. She's got some classes that she's got to go to. Hopefully this afternoon we'll get her story. Now again, I want to tell you guys that if you've been homeless, you're probably going to connect with it immediately. If you have never been homeless, you're going to talk to me and type at me over here on the side chat like I'm full of it, like I'm making things up, or like she's making things up. And the fact is, when you're homeless, you know how it is. You've been homeless, you've lived through it. Now, after Natalie died, I had a few homeless people that wanted to tell me about how great it was for them to be homeless. Well, these are pretty white girls, very pretty white girls. Most of them showed up with a boyfriend, and most of them showed up, well, thinking it was a party and treated it that way. When you're pretty, especially a pretty female, the police are less likely to mess with you. They're less likely to harass you. They're less likely to trump up charges against you. But that doesn't mean they won't. The number one reason for women to become homeless is fleeing domestic violence. And there's a few ways that that happens. Now, there was one lady I knew in Boulder County. She lived in Longmont. And the whole situation happened in Boulder County, of course. Longmont is in Boulder County. Now, she was getting beaten up by her husband. They were married. They had kids together. The husband was molesting the kids. She told on the man who was molesting her kids. Obviously, something was done about it. The man was, well, he was the breadwinner of the household. They were buying the house together. And when she didn't have her husband there to pay part of the bills, she couldn't afford the place. She couldn't afford to even feed her kids on what she was earning, and she had to try to keep the roof over her head. Well, after about 3.5, 4 months, she was evicted. And the same officer that she had been singing his praises, oh, this cop came to our house. He was so nice. He was so kind. He talked to me like I was a person. He helped make sure that my daughters felt safe to give their reports, and so on and so forth, all about this officer, blah, 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 blah. Well, 3 months down the road, 4 months down the road, something like that, she's homeless in Boulder, Colorado. And, well, this very same officer who had come to her house, oh God, I'm mixing up two different stories, ain't I? It was the bricklayer who molested his daughters in Longmont that had come down. That lady who was rescued by the Boulder Police Department when she was beaten up, she lived in Boulder, actual Boulder, because it was Boulder Police Department that was involved. Anyway, let's get back to the story. The thing about this woman is that as soon as she became homeless, that very same officer that she had been singing his praises for months, I mean, she's got her daughters already taken away from her. They're taken by the state because she doesn't have a place for them because her husband is in prison for molesting them. So now her girls are in the system and she's homeless. And this very same officer that she had been singing his praises comes up and starts harassing her for being homeless. She didn't ask to be homeless. She didn't ask to not make enough money to pay for two people worth of bills, two adults with jobs worth of bills. Now, sure, if it was her, she probably would have tried to buy a cheaper house if it was just her. She would have tried to finance for a cheaper house if it was her. But she didn't know that her husband was going to be a child molester and a rapist. So that officer who had been so kind to her when she tried to turn in her ex was a piece of shit to her because she was homeless. The very same officer that comes to your door and talks to you like you're a person no longer sees you as a person when you're out on the streets, just like your own family, just like your friends, telling you if you just worked harder. Here you are, you're going from one job to another. You're going from your job at Stone Lighting to something the labor lady set you up with at night at the newspaper factory. You're working 12, 14, 16-hour days easily, but then you get busted sleeping just one night in Boulder, Colorado with a blanket on. You get charged with trespassing and camping in urban camping for camping within city limits. So now you've got over $400 worth of fines and 60 hours worth of community service. 60 hours of community service, well, that's almost half a month worth of manual labor at a full-time job. It's a full 40-hour work week and then some. And then you consider that there's that $400 you got to come up with too. Well, that's another week. And then there's $35 for a court cost for each of your court dates, and you'll have two of them. It's a screwed up situation. We get told that we wanted it, we needed it, we chose it, we deserved it. When people victimize us, we are told that we chose it. Chose it. People tell us things like, oh, well, if you didn't want to get beat up, you shouldn't have been there. You shouldn't be in public if you don't want to get beat up? What a fucked up message. Now, obviously, this lady who's going to be on my channel and this woman whose children were molested and she was harassed by the same cop that had been her hero just a few months earlier, obviously, these aren't the same person. When she tells her story, you're going to get to understand that. At least I hope. Anyway, I got to get back to trying to do something productive with my life. I got to try to come up with somebody else who's going to help me stay in contact with the people I need to and do so safely. I need somebody from the media who I can add to this email list that's actually going to look at it. Jennifer Dejowski, she wrote her story about me when it was popular to do so. And like most news anchors, they don't give a fuck about anything but popularity. Now, if she made a big deal about the situation, it would make a difference. If she wrote a story that was honest, it would make a difference. But she's not going to. I'd like to believe that she would. I even added her to that email list so that she would be able to see that information, but she hasn't gotten back to me and she's not likely to do so. I'll get a hold of her at some point and she'll tell me, oh, well, I've been busy, I was gonna, if she replies at all, but chances are pretty good she's not. She's gonna keep turning a blind eye. And I'm going to keep speaking out because much of the abuse that I took at the very beginning was because she was not honest in her article and didn't care to be honest, didn't try to be honest. Later on, after the article is old as fuck and people aren't going back to look at it, then she rewrites a little bit of it, but she left out almost everything that was important. Why would she do that? Lack of morality.